Well, hello, and welcome to the first episode of Inspiring Business. My name is Mark Bullock. I'm the co-founder of PhoneBlogger.net, VideoSocials.net, and now of Video Interview Podcast Services, where we facilitate marketing services and systems for professional services firms, including attorneys, financial professionals, coaches, and consultants. Every episode, the intent of this series is I interview business thought leaders who make a difference in the world through their services, their products, or ideas. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, basically anywhere that you might look for a podcast. Today, my guest is Judi Heft, and we'll be discussing what the show is all about, essentially is what's inspired Judi and how she inspires the people that she works with to improve their lives and improve their businesses. Welcome, Judi.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. Great to be here.
Terrific. So I think the best place to start is, who are you? What is your business, and how did you get into it?
Thanks, Mark. So, hi, I'm Judi Heft, financial and lifestyle concierge, and we're celebrating 26 years in business this year, which I'm very excited about. How did I get into this business? That's a good question. So, I grew up in the family retail business. My mother actually was a pioneer and opened a retail store in 1955 without any experience. And I learned a lot from her. I learned how to be a businesswoman, and that's what I really brought to the table. And so, when business was changing, retail business was changing, I had to figure out how to reinvent myself. So I took my backroom knowledge of a business and turned it into a bookkeeping business. I learned how to do bookkeeping the old fashioned double entry ledger way.
Got it. Got it. So, what are you doing now? Obviously, you're not just doing bookkeeping. I know that your business is pretty specialized, but really an amazing service that you provide. Can you outline for us what your primary service is?
Absolutely. So the real meat and potatoes of our business, what we've been doing for the last probably 25 years, is a bookkeeping and bill pay for high net worth individuals. I started this business working with the senior population, which is the 80 to 100-year-olds, not 50 plus. And, I found that they were overwhelmed. And I loved that because I was really felt like I was helping people. It was just such a wonderful thing to be doing. I liked working with the seniors. And then I was networking actually at a senior event. And one of the women there said to me, Judi, do you only work with seniors? And I said, no, not realizing that other people could use our services too. And that's really how it all exploded. I started helping her. She was overwhelmed. She would come home from work, and those were the times when they would call you up. For instance, cable company would call you up and say, you didn't pay your bill and you could pay it over the phone. And she would just swoop all the bills and throw them in a shopping bag and throw them in the closet and not worry about them. She just couldn't function after work. She was going through a lot. So that's how I started. That's how it really grew. I actually helped her. I was in the beginning, I was doing a little bit of office organizing, home office organizing too. And I got her all set up, and I found her a $16,000 dividend check that she didn't know she even had. So there's a lot of rewards there, really helping people get organized and get their heads on straight financially.
Absolutely. And what I'm hearing, Judi, is that it is all about helping, right? So it's not just a bookkeeping service. It's not just a bill pay service. It's the end result is you're actually helping people to get through tough times, to get through being disorganized with their finances, or to get through um, um, finding themselves in the situations where they're overwhelmed. They've got too much to be chasing and keeping track of, et cetera. And entree, what you do really makes a difference for them in the fact that now they're not paying things late. Now they're not having things slip through the cracks. Now that and do you then take it to the next level and help them plan and actually start budgeting and really looking forward instead of just after the fact, like most bookkeeping services are kind of accounting for what happened in the past. And I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear it from you. How do you help
Sure.
them look to the future?
Yes, and that's why it was a few years ago, maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I decided to call myself a concierge, financial concierge, because we do a lot more than bookkeeping. We help people get organized. We help them create spending plans, a budget. I like to call it a spending plan. It's not as daunting. Clients like that better. And we help them with all kinds of projects if they're we work closely with their trust and estates attorney to help them plan for the future because we approach running a household like running a small business, and you really need to know your numbers. And some people don't realize that. I think today we're swiping our credit card and Apple Pay or, so many different ways of paying that we don't pay attention necessarily to what we're spending on. It's just so easy to go online and buy something and not pay attention to it. So we help our people figure out, what are they spending it on? And also, what's interesting too, in the same vein, people sign up
Mhm.
for things and then they forget about it, or they don't even know they
Oh,
signed up for it, and
yeah.
they have all these reoccurring charges on their credit card. I had a client not too long ago that was paying $35 a month for AOL services in this day. And it wasn't an elderly client, it was a younger client. So it's just been interesting. Yeah.
Well, just personal story. I had that with what's the name of it? It was the audio books,
Hmm.
Audible actually,
Yeah, Audible.
and it was like I had built up all of these because I had this dream that I don't have time, so I'll just I'll buy the books via audio and that way I can listen to them when I'm driving or whatever the case may be. And I have, but it had built up like 7 or 8 books, 7 or 8 credits, and I'm like, I'm not using this thing, and it's like 6 months later, and it's not it's not crazy
Oh,
expensive,
it's
but it
still,
it
it adds
adds
up.
up, right? To hundreds of dollars a year, and I'm not using it. And it was like, and it was actually difficult to shut it down because it's like, oh, I'm going to lose I'm going to lose. And no, they give they give the opportunity to use the credits, et cetera, and you can still listen to the books that you've already bought. So anyway, even somebody like me who I really pay attention to that, I don't like to have recurring expenses that aren't required, right? That's it just popped up. So I'm sure that it happens, especially if you've got the resources where it isn't that big a deal, where you're not necessarily feeling it, right? So it's not impacting your daily lives, so it's not showing up as a red flag. So I can only imagine that having you look at it and question, are you using this? Do you need this? Is there another option that might be less expensive, so that they're not just squandering money? I mean, I think all of us hate to squander our resources, right?
Of course.
So
Yeah, I think especially like something like that. What is it, like $15 a month? You think, oh, it's $15. I'll get it next month. And then the next thing you know, it's a year later and it's like almost $200. And there you are, like you didn't even use this thing. So yeah, gym memberships people sign up for and they don't use them, and just other things. Some people that like to you buy something online and it says there's this teeny 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 little box that says check it here and we'll charge you every month for the rest of your life, and people don't even see that box. They didn't even know they checked it off. So we do a lot of that type of thing too.
yeah, and I think most of the time those types of services that they have that box checked for you,
Yeah,
and you
that's
have to uncheck it.
exactly
Right. So
exactly.
I think basically everybody can relate to that. But do you have any other stories where you mentioned that somebody had some found money? Do you have any stories around where somebody may have
No,
may have found resources they didn't even know they had or they had forgotten about?
well, not really that. Another story similar to the other one. I have a client, this was a couple of years ago, who has four teenage boys, and they were buying things on iTunes, playing some video games, and then they didn't realize, and then they were clicking pay now, and she had accumulated about $1,500 in 1 or 2 months worth of charges. So we were able to get those all credited back to her. We saw them and we said, whoa, what is this? Is this legit? And the kid didn't realize, or maybe he did, but he was a teenage boy, so he didn't really want to realize. But anyway, those kinds of things. But yeah, it's been a lot of that.
Wonderful. And as you're helping people, bring to light things that they've either set off at the side, they've ignored because they just got too much going on, et cetera. Do you see, or do you have examples where people have really, now they're working off of a budget, they're much more clear-eyed moving forward, and that you feel like they've really kind of transformed their attitudes about money and paying attention to what they're doing?
A little bit. That's one of the things I've been doing for a little while is some mindset coaching. And I think that's what a lot of it is. It's, changing your mindset around money because we don't pay attention. And maybe those are the habits that we brought down from our parents or the other adults in our lives that taught us as we were children. And part of the money coaching thing is going back and looking at where did those habits come from and how can we change our mindset around that? We're working with a client right now, a young man who has gambling addiction, and his parents actually hired us to help him. It's a high net worth family, and he's
Right.
really needs to be reined in. He has a lot of credit card debt, and we're trying to help him, just to not spend on all of this extra stuff and just be more cognizant of what he's doing. So we're working with him. And we do a lot of other types of lifestyle. The lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
piece is brand new. And so with that, we're doing other projects. And some of those are financial. We're working with clients who are contemplating divorce and they have no idea what they spent. It goes back to what I said in the beginning with the credit cards and Venmo today and Zelle. You don't know what, PayPal. We don't know what we're spending. And so, we're going back 6 months and looking at everything that they're spending so that they know what they need when they go into their divorce, what they know how to, so we help them figure out their financial affidavit. So we do a lot of that kind of work too, helping people. So hopefully they'll change.
So yeah, even in a divorce, that's a life transit. That's probably one of the biggest life transitions, right?
Exactly.
So you're able to help them to prepare for that transition, so they're not coming into it blind. But I'm sure there's other big life transitions, as well. I can imagine if somebody moves, or a major job change, or something like that. Are these good times for people to connect with you and have you help them look at how that circumstance is going to affect them?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we take a look at all of that stuff. So, for instance, we've been working with some executors to help them settle estates when they really have no idea how to do that, and that's really a good way to look at things and see what's really involved and what needs to be done. And working closely with the attorneys on those types of things too. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And now the other interesting thing is, I'm sure that your website has information. I know that you've done blogs on a lot of this stuff. I know that you've recorded videos on a lot of this stuff because you're a Video Socials member, and I've seen you record many of these videos. So where can people find that information? And let's start talking about the books that you've written.
So they can find all the information is on our website, judithheft.com. There's all the blogs are up there. We have a whole list of resources there. We have books from authors that we recommend, good financial books that we think are important. Our team, of course, is on there. And then all our services are listed on there. And our book is the next book. So my first book I wrote, 5 years ago now, is How to Be Smart, Successful, and Organized with Your Money. And that's been really great. That was kind of like a guideline of experience. And I took that, actually, I wrote that book from some of the blogs that had been written. I took some of those blogs that I thought were applicable and we put those into a book. And now the next book is coming out in May, actually, May 10th. It's Mastering Your Financial Life Cycles. So
Okay.
that's really a great manual. And we start from birth and we tell people what they need to expect. I mean, I don't think people realize how expensive it is to have a baby and what you need to do. And, documents you need to get, you need to redo your will, you need to change your beneficiaries if need be, planning for the future. So there's a lot of good hints in there and some good checklists.
So what inspired you to write the second book? Because I know obviously there's financial planners and there's this whole world of estate planning, et cetera, et cetera. And this seems to me to be more of a kind of a parallel to that, so that people can actually, and touching on something that you talked about earlier, is shifting their mindset to looking at life from a perspective of planning for obviously college, huge expenses, buying a home, huge expenses, having a child, those of us who are parents, those of us who are parents of multiple kids, basically, what does it cost? Everything you have and everything you can borrow, right? So,
Right. Good point. Yes. And also planning for retirement, thinking about retirement. And, it's never too early to start thinking about that. When my kids were in their 20s, I tried to get them, of course, they wouldn't listen to me. I tried to get them to do some kind of a 401k or something because I know there's studies like if you start those in your 20s, by the time you're 50, you have millions of dollars just by putting a little bit of money. Of course, my kids didn't listen to me because why should they listen to me? But so that's in the book too. We're hoping that other people will listen to us, other people's children maybe will listen to a neutral party. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to educate people on that we find that are important that we've seen in our own lives. And what do you do when you're buying your first car? How do you do that? Should you buy a brand new car? Should you buy a used car? Previously owned cars, they call them today. But whatever the case may be. So we have a lot of good tips in there and checklists. So I was inspired by seeing people not really understand how to manage their day-to-day money. It's their daily money, not their investments. We're not investment advisors. We're not accountants, but it's really learning how to handle your day-to-day money. And you know what? I also, one of the things that we talk about in that book is having a 6-month emergency fund, which so many young people don't know. I have someone I know that a young woman whose car was actually repossessed because she didn't make a bunch of payments and she didn't have an emergency fund and she just wasn't paying attention to anything. And I think, as we know, at our old ages, that what is it? Youth is wasted on the young, and we think it's not going to affect us. We've got time, but it's not true. You got to pay attention.
So if I can tell a story to kind of reinforce that, because in my own world, I had heard back from when I was in my 20s, start putting away for retirement now, start investing now, get at least 3 months, but as you say, 6 months of emergency money in play, and I just never did it. And we had a major financial fallout, now 15 years ago, something like that. And I still didn't actually, as we kind of rebuilt from that, I still didn't have that cushion set in play. And we had a couple of emergencies that we ended up having to borrow money, and we were literally trying to get away from that, the whole borrowing money thing. After, when you have your financial legs pulled out from underneath you, you start thinking about debt very, very differently, right? So, so we had learned that lesson, but we now have, it's literally taken several years, but we now have 6 months in the bank. The relief that I feel, or the how much I can breathe now that I know that's the case. Because if anything comes up, there's a problem with the business, there might be, this might impact us, a job, my wife works, full-time, as an employee, if what happens if the job goes away, or there's, what happens if, as you said, the car breaks down.
What if there's a pandemic?
What happens when there's a pandemic? Exactly. Right. So, having, and fortunately we haven't had to use it, but having that little, that cash nest egg, what it does for you emotionally is just huge, because it's like, it's incredible. It's incredible. And I'm coming up on 60, and we haven't had that until just this last year or so. So it makes a huge difference.
Mark, I can totally relate. I was in a situation where who's my ex now, husband, and I did not pay attention to our finances. I didn't have any emergency funds. We ended up filing for bankruptcy. I had to borrow money to pay the attorney to file for bankruptcy. That's how bad things were. I mean, I was lucky I didn't lose my house. That was the only thing that was exempt. But no, I know. And I really it took me till I was in my mid 50s to learn from that experience, to finally get my act together, and figure it out and know what I need to do. And it's hasn't been a long time where I've had that same emergency fund myself, and it feels good. If the oil burner breaks down, or you need to do a big expense with your car, or whatever the situation might be, it's nice to know that money is there, and you don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul, or borrow, which you
Exactly. exactly.
One of
And
the things I do in
it's
my business now that I learned, and I think it's a really important thing that people can be doing personally, is
mhm.
when the money comes in, it goes into one account, and then I figure out what the percentages are, and I allocate that to the different accounts. And I actually even have a savings account that money goes to right off the top. So it goes to my taxes, it goes to my own personal expenses, whatever the case may be. And
Right.
my business, I put it into payroll. So, that way I know that money is always there and it's a game changer for me. I've been doing that for about 5 years. And that's when I finally felt financially successful.
So for somebody who hasn't been through, two things come up. One is that, so we're both speaking from experience, right? So I'm going to say that that's part of what inspired you was, you lived through, a major financial collapse, if you want to call it that, or, a major thing,
Sit back.
as did we. And, please, if you're watching this, don't wait till you have this, because it can happen to you. Believe me, it can happen to you. But I think
We have
both
to
of us,
be proactive. We have to be proactive.
you got to be proactive. But the thing that strikes me, and I'm still struggling with, is it just seems like so much work to have to, I'm not used to doing it that way. I'm not, what do you mean? I take it in and then I'm allocating. I just want to, I've got all these bills that I got to pay. So let me just pay the bills. And then if there's anything left over, then I'll put that aside. Right. So that was the old way that I used to work with it. And I know that lots of people have that at one level or another. How do they get past that mindset and that shift to, okay, it's going to take a little bit of discipline? And it sounds like maybe you can help them with that. Maybe you can be their guide through that process, because once you're on the other side of it, it isn't painful. That's what's been so valuable to me. It's like, it's actually freeing to me to be able to actually know that, okay, I've got a check coming in, and where it's going to go, and how much is going to be left over to play with, rather than,
It,
playing
it's
catch
not,
up all the time.
it's not how much is going to be left over to play with. It's paying yourself first.
Mm,
And you pay the bills. So when you take that money off the top and pay yourself what you need and want for your needs and wants, then the rest of it, you have to budget it. You have to figure out what's that percentage, and take that money off the top and take that 6-month emergency account off the top, so you have that money put away, you don't touch it, and then you're paying the bills, and that way you're not living above your means either. You need to stay, the credit card situation, don't charge anything on your credit card that you're not going to pay in full every month, is a good rule of thumb to remember too. And that all goes to that too. So how much do I need for groceries? How much am I going to spend on a vacation this year? Put that money away, and then, but first pay yourself and figure all of that other expenses out separately. So that's the part that gives me, I don't know, confidence. So I know that I'm paying
right.
myself first. I don't have to worry anymore. Before it was, if there was anything left, I'd pay myself first. And that way there wasn't always money to pay all the bills either.
And isn't it fascinating? Again, it just keeps coming back to me. It's freeing, right? It's like, when I sit down to pay the bills, or I sit, I get a check in, or whatever the case may be, I don't have the anxiety anymore, right? I know where the money's going to go. And I can see it was so rewarding to build that cushion. It was like, we set a goal, and put away every month, and every time money came in, there's the piece that went off the top to put away that money. And so and instead of it being well, I'd like a newer car, right? Well, that's hundreds of dollars a month that could be, you know made use of. We can live with a car for another year. We don't need to replace the car every 3 or 4 years, as an example. So it just provides a freedom, to me.
Peace of mind.
And yes, absolutely, it's peace of mind. So if you can't tell, I'm actually inspired by what you do, because because I've gotten, even though you haven't worked with me in my finances, I know that what you teach through your book, through your website, and through your engagement with clients is about kind of getting them over that hump, to shift that mindset, right, into one where, if you'll add a little bit of discipline, a little bit of planning makes all the difference in the world. And unlike what you initially feel like is that it's taking away freedom, so that I can just spend the money that, the way that makes sense to me at the moment, to now I know what's going on. And that provides a tremendous amount of as you say, peace of mind. So
I think we
awesome.
have to take a look and see, where did those money habits come from?
Mm-hmm.
And then try to change the narrative and try to change the story in your head, and so that you think differently. It really is mindset, and what are we teaching our children by example,
Right.
so that they see that what we're doing, so they know what's, the right way to do it. They're not going to listen to us, of course, all the time.
Right.
But, we just still need to show by example, the best learning tool.
Absolutely. And one other question that just comes up towards the end, because I've heard this so many times. I've earned the right to spend the way that I want to spend. Right. And this, whether it be doctors, lawyers, it doesn't matter. A business owner that's doing well. You touched on it earlier, living within our means. Just because you've got a good cash flow, just because you've got, you've got means, how is it shortcutting themselves if they have the mindset of, well, I've earned it, so I'm going to spend it on what I want to spend it on, without really looking at their whole picture and kind of planning moving forward.
Well, I think the most important thing with that is to keep in mind we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, especially if you're an employee of a company. You don't know if that, or even if you have your own business, you don't know. I mean, could be
Pandemics happen. Yeah.
exactly right. You could be thriving right now, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next year down the road. So you really need to plan for that. You can't just run a business or run a household. Like I said before, I think running a household is like running a small business, and you can't run it by the seat of your pants. You have to have an actual plan. I think that's important. And a lot of people don't realize that. I think that you need to sit down with your partner, if you're married or in a relationship, and have meetings like you do in a business, and plan your finances and figure out, what you want to take this amazing vacation, but do you really have the money for it? Yeah, it sounds great. And you feel like you work hard and you want it and you deserve it, but what's that going to do to your bottom line?
Right. And is it literally going to shortcut you later?
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
wonderful. So I did. Thank you so much. I'm actually thrilled to have you as my first guest to my podcast. I'm inspired by what you do, and I appreciate and that you've taken the time to express it here. Do you have anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to that you feel is inspiring to you, that might make a great guest for this show or for your upcoming show? Not to give away put you on the spot, but I know that you're considering getting started with your own podcast and stream.
I'm definitely getting started with my own podcast. I've been procrastinating it a little because I'm excited and scared at the same time, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, no, you know what? So one of the people who's actually in Video Socials is Stephanie Shalofsky, and she's an organizer, a home and office organizer. And I think she'd be a great guest for me and for you too, because she really gets it. And for me, it's really, she complements what we do too. And, you really need to keep your papers in order, and you never know what you need to keep. People keep papers forever. They don't know what they need and what they don't need. And so that's a really great service that you offer. So I think she'd be a great guest, and she's smart and articulate.
I happen to agree. So shout out to Stephanie Shalofsky. And well, listen, Judy, thank you so much. Good luck on your book. There'll be links below. I'm sure. What is going to be the best way for them to get your latest book, as an example?
Well, the launch is May 10th. So
Okay.
there will be information on our website. If they get our newsletter, they'll get links like that. We're, blasting it all over social media. It's on, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook for Business. So it's all over that. And, they can reach out to me. They can reach out to me at Judy@judithheft.com if they want some more information on it. But I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be great. I'm co-authoring it actually with my CFO, Liz Levy. We worked on
Ah,
it together. And she comes from, she's younger than I am, and she has teenagers. And so she has a different perspective too. When I had my
absolutely.
teenagers, things have changed since I had my teenagers. So it was a good collaboration. And we wrote different chapters. And so it's really coming together.
Wonderful. So it's judithheft.com.
Yes.
And the name of the company, if somebody's looking for you on
Heft and Associates.
Heft and Associates.
Judith
Terrific.
Heft and Associates.
Judith Heft and Associates. My apologies. Excellent.
Yes. No,
Excellent.
they'll find it either way.
Terrific. Judy, thank you. And I hope to see everybody back to the next time that we do another inspiring business podcast. Again, I'm
Thank
Mark
you,
Bullock.
Mark. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Judy.
It's a pleasure being here.
It was a pleasure having you. Absolutely. And again, I'm Mark Bullock, the co-founder of videosocials.net, of phoneblogger.net, and of Video Interview Podcast Services, or VIP services. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.